Hello, everybody, and I am back, and I am going to read to you again from The Princess Royale. It's a book that can be found on Audible for only one credit. It's a fascinating read if you're interested in the styling of the Princess Royale. It's on Audible with a pleasant English lady. She speaks very pleasantly and she just narrates it so well, but for free, I'm going to read this aloud because I think it's such a good book to understand the stylings and to understand our current Princess Royale, which is Princess Anne. They're all very fascinating to read about. Anne is our current Princess Royale, and she works so hard. And some of her teachings and some of her um, what she's been taught is right here at the school, the Benendon school. This chapter is about her time at the Benendon school. Um, let's see here. You can see here that she attended this school when she was young. Here's a picture of the school. It's outside of, I think, Kent. It's in the Kent district. It's a little Victorian country house set in 250 acres. Your living, learning, sporting, leisure facilities are clustered around a 19th century main house. In 2012, Princess Royal opened up a science center, and when you scroll further down the page, the Wikipedia page, actually, you will see that Bonham Carter opened up a theater here in 2007. She opened up a new theater. First production was Grease. The following year, an Eagle Classroom, a totally self-sustaining building opening in the Victoria Water Gardens. So Princess Anne attended school. In 1963, Princess Anne and Prince Basma of Jordan became pupils at the Benendon School. Janet Allen was the head mistress. The Jubilee Wing was opened by Janet Allen and Catherine Bird in 1977. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started in reading about this chapter. But again, this is in Kent, England, at Benendon. So this is a school she went to. As you can see, she really loved lacrosse. That was one of Anne's things. She really loved lacrosse. So we will go ahead and get started reading. As for the fun and the permutations of coincidence, an augury may found gleamingly strangely in the glassy galaxy of minor royal events shortly before Princess Anne was born. On July 15th, 1950, in the course of a day of mingled duties and pleasures, the then Queen of England and the late Queen Mother visited a school in Kent and, less officially, the Cazalet stables at Fairlawn, where she inspected some horses and she had in training for jumping. The school was none other than Benendon, which was later to claim Princess Anne as a pupil, and the infant princess made her advent into the world precisely 1 month later on that day. If Prince Charles's first steps toward his royal future began on the day of his mother's coronation, the day when, aged 4, he thrust up his chin and smartly saluted to the crowds from the palace balcony. Princess Anne's initiation was when she rode in a state landau at the age of 8 to watch her mother taking salute at the trooping of the color. Her own more personal first footing in the ceremony came from the following New Year when she presented the Sunday school prizes at Sandringham, and a month or two later she made a speech to Lady Baden-Powell commemorating a half-century of Girl Guides, a speech consisting of a single phrase: "I ask you to accept this golden candle." As another of our parents' judicious essays in early training, she read a lesson at the carol service at West Newton Church, no small ordeal even for a self-confident girl of 12. With all her family listening and her own voice echoing back magnified and shrill from the loudspeakers used for the crowds outside. But this was in the year when Charles first went to Gordonston and pretended he found it less gruesome than he had expected, thus awakening in Anne all the old impulses of nursery rivalry. She wanted to go to boarding school, and the Queen and Prince Philip were in agreement that the broader base education and wider circle of acquaintances presented great advantage. Anne was not the first British princess to be flung into the rush and bustle, the distinctions and the disciplines of a girls' school. Princess Alexandra had gained that particular laurel at Heathfield on George VI's direct advice to her widowed mother that she should have every chance of being an ordinary child while she could. Princess Anne was nevertheless to be the first daughter of the sovereign to break free from the rigid traditional circles of governesses and tutors. And the decision was more difficult than it seems today. The choice of Benendon was influenced by the considerations that sway most parents: the closeness of friends from a girl who may visit on Saturday afternoons, or of relatives to take her out on Sundays. The school was convenient to the Nevilles at Uckfield, where the Queen spent many happy weekends, to the Brabournes near Ashford, and quite near the Queen Mother on her visit to Fairlawn. On the forest uplands that fringed the Weald of Kent, it was reasonably within reach of London, and yet sufficiently remote and secluded to deter inquisitive reporters, and particularly the insistent photographers of the international press. Apart from a preliminary visit with her parents during the holidays, Princess Anne had just turned 13 when launched as a new girl into Benendon. She came down overnight from Balmoral with the Queen, in whose honor the school's teaching staff and 300 girls were drawn up into the forecourt, a battlemented mock Tudor pile, once the home of Viscount Rothmere. The place gave an impression of St. James's Palace or Hampton Court. That's true. Looking at that picture, that looks so much like St. James's Court and Hampton Court, which I've been to and is very nice. That Hampton's Court is just a short ride away, subway ride or train ride away from London. It's so easy. It's right near the train station. You just get off the train station and you can walk right there to Hampton Court. So, shaking hands with some 30 teachers, the new royal pupil must have felt that her reception would never end, and she broke into smiles of relief or hearing that she was one of 60 new girls that term and one of 4 princesses. The other 3 were the ill-fated Mary and Sihon of Ethiopia and Basma of Jordan. The most comforting introduction was to Elizabeth Summershield, a girl of her own age at Guildford House in the same lower 5th form. She was to be her house mother. This is a pleasant Benendon idea for new girls. The mother is usually an arrival of the previous term who introduces her own group of friends and bears the responsibility of helping the newcomer to find her feet. Elizabeth was also one of three girls sharing the Magnolia dormitory with Anne. The first floor room, so called from the tree that reared its glossy leaves beneath the leaded windows. The princess was told that there was to be a new girls' party the following evening, and, as she says, I just tagged along. At the party, Anne was to meet Bridget Shearer, another new girl that term, whom she unexpectedly encountered 9 years later at Munich, attached to the Canadian Olympics team. Indeed, Benendon seniors or older girls crop up everywhere and have amusingly spiced royal engagements in Germany, Paris, Hong Kong, and Istanbul. The school takes pride in helping its girls to release the value of sound and thorough work. And so they emerged in medicine and the law, in science, and even the stock exchange, and in particularly ever-testing occupation known to women. Grown up now, they share the same memories, the annual fever of Hobbies Day and Speech Day, in summer the pageant, and in winter the rising excitement of preparation for the Christmas close of term, the carol service, the ever-changing activities to help local good causes. But Princess Anne's first impressions were of the amount of people and the staggering noise. The first peal of bells shattered one at 7 in the morning. The wild charge to the bathroom was in full swing by 5 past. Bells rang for appointed purposes throughout the day. Accustomed to silence and empty of the palace corridors, the new girl found herself engulfed in chattering streams of girls in the school passageways. An unexpected meeting with a teacher, Anne remembers, could pulverize her with shyness. Far from quickly forming her own clique, as some reports suggested, the seating at the dining tables in Guildford House was changed every few days, so that it was so that Anne sat next to everyone in turn and got acquainted equally well that first term with 50 or 60 girls. The beds were stripped before breakfast were made up afterwards. If there had been an Olympic contest in quick bed making, Prince Anne could readily have qualified. This and the compulsory brisk run down the drive and back helped, Anne said, to work off one's breakfast. New girls were solemnly warned by more experience that at the end of term they would be expected to sing a song, anything of their own choosing, to Miss Clark, the head mistress. And the senior girls who took lunch with her high table, most of the innocents shivered at the prospect for weeks. It was a hoax, of course, which Anne rather wrecked by saying, well, I'll have to go. Nor was she to be inveigled into joining the Madrigal Club on that account. Although Elizabeth Summershield was a member, and Anne was a fairly good contralto voice, who later enrolled in the school choir. More in her line, the princess joined the badminton club, for which she eventually served on the committee. She became a leading star of the dancing club, specializing in Scottish dancing, and was soon also an enthusiastic component of the pottery club with Sandra Hacking. The pleasures of pottery included a barbecue at a kiln house where the evening passed so swiftly that, as one of Anne's fellow tactfully mentioned in the school magazine, we did not have time to try the electric wheel. At a school sale of work, the Sue Ryder Charities benefited handsomely from the brisk demand for models of horses, and other pieces signed A. The young saleswoman prudently did not disclose that the Potters group also included Annabelle, Allison, and Antonia. Part 2. Princess Anne became immersed and absorbed in the world of school far more readily than Charles, and faster than the Queen and Prince Philip had thought possible. The Saturday afternoons with the Nevilles at Uckfield grew fewer, except when her mother was there. "Do you think I can get back early?" she would ask. "There's a movie, The Baby and the Battleships." Question on Benendon cuisine, she could rattle off bones and barley and gangs and mud, dead man's leg, to be interpreted to the uninitiated as hot pot, chocolate pudding, and jam roll. Cheerfully announcing that she was about to become a mother, it transpired that there was to be a Christmas party for the babies from the nearby Dr. Barnardo's home, with a schoolgirl mothering with each small child. It turned out, however, that the first year that her role lay more prosaically behind the scenes, drudging with the washing-up squad. In her second term, she was a house mother. She was a house mother to a new girl, so much a part of the school setting already that 2 or 3 days elapsed before the new arrival quite grasped her identity. Like all new girls, the newcomer had talked a great deal of her mother, and then realized that her house mother had said very little about her own. The princess's teachers found her promising in history, geography, and English literature. She enjoyed reading aloud. Okay, brief interruption. Okay, so Princess Anne, she enjoyed reading aloud, in which she displayed sensitivity and confidence that was above average. Thanks to P.B.'s firm grounding, she was very good in arithmetic. There was to be no inadvertent cooking of the books later when Anne took charge of accounts in the domestic science classes. Her practical streak attracted her to physics and chemistry, although she considered herself a dud in the latter, and the flights of higher mathematics forever defied her. The Benedictine syllabus embraced French, German, Latin, Greek, drawing, hard work, needlework, public speaking, and in the sixth form, committee procedure. Term in, term out, the Queen's daughter could not help but gain considerable personal competence in these studies, apart from the hobby subjects that chiefly interested the press. Miss Anwell's handwork class, for instance, it was like a toy factory in the winter term in the rush to fill the crates of gifts for the Pestalozzi Children's Village. The Palace, as well-appointed domestic science lab was nicknamed, saw a fever of cake baking in all 5 of its kitchen units just before the Christmas lighthouse boxes were being packed. Benendon had no school motto, no agreement on one having ever been reached, except on the basic theme of helping others. From the boat race mascots made up and sold for cancer research to the income provided for the Tibetan refugee in India, from the treats and the financial help to blind babies' homes and the sums raised for the ex-Benendon Sue Ryder charities. Anne learned that every activity possible could be geared to goodwill, all which was appropriate training for a space-age princess. What a good foundation for a Princess Royale to go to this school. The school's fees were then £175 a term. Among the optional extra subjects were piano, speech and drama, ballet, and fencing. Asked to choose for herself, Anne decided, "I'll take the lot." But she was persuaded to reduce this to pottery and writing, piano, and a wind instrument, the oboe, selected mainly because she pretended to consider it unfair that the lady who gave the oboe lessons was listed last among visiting teachers. But even with Prince Charles' encouragement, her efforts in this respect faltered after a year or two. Out of doors, the junior pleasures of the asphalt roller skating rink were rapidly relinquished. Netball claimed the princess, and then lacrosse, in which she progressed into the second school. In her last year, the interests of the whole school centered upon the team's fortunes when they reached the finals of all the England school tournament. They won every match in their section, and so reached a dramatic crescendo of victory by winning the last match 6-1. Princess Anne exulted in being unrecognized throughout. Her father, greatly alarmed by her promising to make a personal presentation to the team if they won, which would surely have entailed publicity. But he was only teasing, and in the event, a larger Easter egg from an anonymous donor was borne onto the field to tremendous cheering. In the summer, Princess Anne played a good game of tennis at the Guildford House pairs, but laments that she fell to pieces in a more serious matches. Her progress nonetheless astonished Prince Michael in one of the more serious tournaments at Coppens. Punctual and methodical, as the report says, Anne spread her activities no wider than any other girl, but evinced family talent in marshalling the 60 minutes an hour of her time. There was a story of her elder brother at Cheam being warned that he might get into trouble with the matron by staying up long after bedtime to finish his chores, and solemnly replying, "I can't help it, I must finish my duties." Anne, with her ingrained tidiness, would cheerfully clear up after other girls, helping out, as she would put it. But unpredictably, she might equally scowl at the clutter and the shrug. "Too bad. If they can't bother, nor shall I." Her parents had expected the boarding school would create a necessary diversity and a new measure of freedom in her interests, and they were not disappointed. As noisy and casual and, when the spirit moved, mullish as any teenager, Anne fretted, and she fitted in, though initially not without some deliberate effort. When the Queen attended the school carol service, her daughter's nail-biting and nerves were very noticeable. It did not matter so much on Speech Day one year when the Queen came to see a play. In the play, Princess Anne played Alfred, son of Mrs. Phipps, and Christopher Fry's The Boy in the Cart, and sank herself both on and off stage into the comic elements of the part. Another time she was unidentifiable in the crowd of seasick animals in A Miracle Play of the Flood, and her mother was not present. It seems that the princess richly clowned and staggered about as a drunken sailor in the Dido and Aeneas. Nor did it matter when the Queen or Prince Philip arrived unofficially, inconspicuously parking in the drive like any other parent, to whisk her off for midterm. As time passed, Anne grew into the habit of writing of the school crowd as "the rest of us," and the phrase unconsciously disclosed her sense of belonging. Princess Anne, she's uninhibited. She's forthright. She's a friendly person, typified by the general impressions. She always she always does what she can. At age 16, the uncertain newcomer of 2 years earlier had developed into much more of a self-assured young person who could galley cry, "Watch my halo!" just before a car collected her to take her to Sunday lunch with the Archbishop of Canterbury. By Benendon tradition, each schoolhouse staged a party in annual rota, providing entertainment and hospitality for guests from the entire school. And when Guilford's turn came up, Anne's advice was evidently sought on sophisticated royal ideas, was with the result that the early part of the evening was spent playing games of chance. And the new wing showed certain resemblances to a casino. The rival Edsham House was it was hard to compete the following year. The hall had been valiantly disguised as Albany and Clyde, making a bar manned by dollies with maxi skirts, bright red lipsticks, horizontal headbands, and those shoes. The rest of us, they were ordered to wear necklaces. The dresses were not needed. In the holidays, she had a free rein in accepting invitations from the Benendon parents, and the Benendon contingents were in strength when the Queen gave a reciprocal party for Charles and Anne at Windsor Castle. Team by team, the princess had new experiences and exploits to recount, with a comic emphasis when she came home. Her horizons clearly were widening, and she progressed into the upper forms. The Queen had collywobbles when she heard the girls going off on the busload on Saturday rock climbing expeditions, which her daughter was tackling sandstone rocks 50 feet high. "I sometimes wonder if rock climbing isn't a bit more dangerous than it's made out," she said, and Miss G, the teacher in charge, made reassuring murmurs. The peaks and the precipices, they were in fact at the bowels of mountaineering gymnasium. In climbing kits of airnecks, jeans, and gym shoes, the girls were roped together to climb, to overcome the scramble nets, or attempt the hazards and difficulties of the Matterhorn tree. Anne, in particular, she shone with a special proficiency at the outset in being one of the few girls to know how to tie a bowline. Anne passed her test in survival swimming. She neatly turned items of underwear into a life-saving jacket while in the water. She reached bronze standard for the Duke of Edinburgh's award, but declined to try further and satisfy a school joke about wanting a gold medal from Papa. Alert for any adventurous opportunity, she got to know that direction finding entailed a night in the youth hostel, and that the study of the land structure and farming for an A-level geography brought a weekend at the holiday camp and being let loose on Romney Marsh. We arrived at the holiday camp and a hut known as Scarborough. At first sight, it seemed to be a corridor, but revealed many doors with keys leading to small rooms with wash basins. There were double bunks and one bed electric heaters. This was luxury, the princess wrote at the time. When the excitement was over, there was a supper. It was fish and chips, and the first of many lectures. In the morning, the schoolgirls had visited a farm, only to find the farmer called on business. So they toiled at the top of the church tower to see what they could through the swirling mist. We next did a survey from the coach while eating lunch, Anne noted, and then we stopped for refreshments in a cafe. In the afternoon, we sat hopefully at Lymph Airport, waiting in vain for the clouds to lift. Airport lounges, they can be quite fascinating. Perhaps one too readily forgets that a daughter of the sovereign had never before surveyed anything at such matter-of-fact levels. The Prince of Wales, on first visiting the House of Commons, had sat almost alone in the Sergeant-at-Arms box. Prince Anne went there at 16 years old with the advanced level history group of 24 Benendon girls, all equally incognito in the blue school uniform. Their mentor, Harry Legg Bourke, MP for Ely, had been offered to show them around, was not only the father of Victoria Legg Bourke, one of Anne's closest Benendon friends, but also a guards officer and the author of a standard work on the household cavalry. He must have found his experience as an escort somewhat trying, and mischievously, since it was St. Valentine's Day, Anne ensured that he was presented with a string of 24 blood-red paper hearts as a token of appreciation. No one paid any attention to the party of schoolgirls having lunch at the nearby restaurant in a church house, among the local office workers, or listening to Question Time in the Commons. And so, as one of the group recorded, we said goodbye to Sir Harry and took the underground to Cannon Street. Back in Benendon in time for supper. For Princess Anne, it became a notable experience in a royal double identity. 9 months later, wearing a gown of white silk and a diamond tiara, she rode with the Queen and the Prince of Wales in the Irish state coach to take part in the state opening of Parliament for the first time, processing demurely in the House of Lords and taking her place in the chair of the state to the left of the Queen, but frowning a little, as if she felt the claustrophobia of court life was closing in. Okay. This is a longer chapter than I thought, so we are on to the next section. Part 3. This is called Part 3. When visiting their nieces at Benendon, unwary aunts, though never parents, would sometimes ask if Princess Anne would be pointed out to them, which invariably brought the guarded response, "She's not around. She's usually off somewhere." The least sensitive might recognize a loyal brush-off, but the reply was generally truthful. There was seldom a spare Saturday when the princess and a school friend or two did not head to the village and disappear through the white-painted gates of the Moat House Riding School as if into the arcady. The stage of this had been set none too soon. Riding was a recent innovation at Benendon, and Cherry Hatton Hall had established her school at Moat House little more than 3 years before Princess Anne's arrival. Winner of these trophies as the Prix Caprilli at Harrington, which she had held 2 years running, Mrs. Hatton Hall's invaluable asset was that she remembered as a child being afraid of her first pony and she recognized that only skillful instructions had brought her confidence and mastery. Princess Anne was very reverse, fearless from the outset, and already with a store of encouraging small prizes and rosettes. Yet Cherry felt that she could benefit from a fresh and thorough grounding. "But don't drop her whatever you do, Miss Clark," the headmistress of Benendon. She warned Cherry when briefing her. Riding on Bandit, a pony then shared with Prince Charles, Anne had made her first appearance in a public competition at the age of 11 and had been given her first all-around pony, Hijinks. She was given Hijinks for her 12th birthday. She soon won a shared first prize in a pair jumping event at Ascot Gymkhana and in a silver challenge cup for the first best under 13 rider in field of 20. For fun for the children, in that first hijinks summer, the Queen held a gymkhana for young local competitors at Windsor Home Park, and confessed to finding it the most embarrassing when the main jumping event was won by her daughter against 14 entrants. If Anne, now and then, gave her instructor an impression of thinking she knew it all already, this schoolgirl's arrogance could change in a flash to a rueful apology given with a smile, just like her mother's. Some 20-year school girls in their Benetton riding kit came down in the school bus every Thursday afternoon for their 75-minute lesson, which began with what were called supplying exercises, touching toes from the saddles without stirrups before practicing circles at trot and canter, and then cavaletti. The princess endured these elementary stages with relative docility, although, as Miss Pears said, she took a mischievous delight in disrupting her class at intervals by pinching Jeeks behind the saddle so that he bucked. But it was with private or small group sessions on Saturdays that the Moat House amenities were most appreciated, especially with progress in seniority, when Anne was allowed to ride over to Hatton Hall's 70 acres with only her detective, David Groves, for adult company. During her school days, the princess rode nearly every day of the 60 horses and ponies and paddocks, gaining insight into individual reactions in a way not always possible with the finely schooled mounts at Windsor. She can still vividly recall their special characteristics. The skewbald jester, whom she rode to win in the Benendon show jumping team against two neighboring schools, the amenable Dumbbell, the skittish Roulette, Copper, Dinah, Punch, the bouncy Jimmy, and the rest. It was with Jimmy crossing a field that she lost later balance, lurched forward on his neck, broke a bone in her little finger. "Oops, there goes my finger," was all she said. White-faced, she endured the pain pretty well, while taken up to London by Mr. Groves to have it set. The Queen allayed Benneton's anxieties by promptly sending a message that no real harm was done and that the accident was no doubt due to the princess's good. And indeed, Anne's interest in the finer arts of schooling a horse developed rapidly, until she had presently rode in a school quadrille team for the Benetton fete. The rehearsals, the school magazine reported, involving endless patience, collisions, practice, rhythm and effort, as Virginia Whitty, Griselda George, Princess Anne, and Caroline Brown found to the cost of their nerves. Cherry Hatton Hall's regular tuition was undoubtedly responsible for the good seat and balance, allied to improving judgment and horse sense, so evident when the princess began her advanced coaching under Alison Oliver in 1968. Yet Anne could be cussedly stubborn, as Miss Hatton Hall once said in her reminiscence. And rough edges were not smooth, nor high standards attained without occasional conflict. An acute hat crisis, for instance, occurred behind the idyllic pastoral scenes of the Benendon pageant. In her role as a messenger to Queen Elizabeth I, Anne had to gallop into sight to announce the coming of the Queen. The ground was rough and potholed, and a fall could have meant serious injury. It was only prudent to require the princess to wear a hard cap beneath her feathered Tudor bonnet, and she flatly refused. Boy, that Anne is tough. She did have that stubborn streak. She said no other girl would be riding in two hats. No one else was asked to look so silly, she stormed. And it was useless to the producers to point out that the other girls were merely walking their horses. The princess jutted out of that firm Victorian lower lip of hers and took the argument to her house mistress, only to hear that she must be sensible and do as she was told. The writing teacher was asked to take up the issue, but found she could not cope with the mood of outright. A right royal rebellion she was. I won't do it. I'll phone Mummy, the princess threatened, fully convinced that she was being unfairly mollycoddled. In the end, she phoned Mommy and put down the telephone, crestfallen. She said, "If you are told to wear a cap, you jolly well better wear a cap," the Queen had said. And that was the end of that matter. The minor role played by Anne in High Jinks in the pageant was a considerable success, and of course, the peak of her hard cap was never noticed. Eventually, it fell to Anne to write the annual riding report, thinly disguised in the third person, in the school magazine. The individual combined training was won by Princess Anne, with J. Malcapine second. Abe Biggood was third. Very well done, everybody. Then a regal commentator could not resist mentioning a more pressing topic involving our own debut in a contest at a national level. Last year we did a quadrille on opening day, and this year C. Brown, L. Greer, J. Lloyd, and Princess Anne are off to Clapham Common to try their luck again against 18 other quadrilles with the hope of qualifying for Wembley. It won't be quite the same as the church fete. In the event, court mourning was for her great-aunt, Princess Marina. Compelled the princess to withdraw from the opening rounds, although the formalities were relaxed in time for her ride, in gorgeous Georgian costume in the finals at the Horse of the Year show. The team had qualified among the 18 other quadrilles, and Anne ecstatically dreamed of winning. The Wembley audience numbered thousands, and nerves were taut. At Benendon, a cross-country event had once lost thanks to one miserable girl who went on the wrong side of the flag at the last fence, and in the complicated formation dressage at Wembley there was similarly one miscreant in what seemed a disastrous finish. Or so the princess decided. In the wreck of her hopes, her indictment of the offender, delivered in ringing tones and salty language, it could be heard far beyond the changing room. The team, in fact, came second, and Anne regretted her outburst afterwards. But her rage had been no less incandescent both with her horse and herself. when riding in the Oxford University draghounds one Easter. She had fallen at the last fence and broke her nose. Her choice of words was so explicit that the master hounds thought she was only shaken, and it was a day or two before Anne learned she would have to undergo an operation. What really worried her was not the risk to lose her looks, but the prospect lest the injury should wreck a projected visit to Jamaica for the Commonwealth Games. But that is a later story. Okay, this is the last bit, just a few more pages, so this is an extra long chapter, but it's a good foundation into the values of Princess Anne, how she developed her horse riding interest, and so many of the values that she has today. School life, family life, and the texture of royal events usually blended far better than anyone expected. Benendon was sufficiently close to Aunt Margot and Uncle Tony in their hideaway Sussex cottage near Nyman's, and for Anne to go there on Sunday tea. It was close enough to Uckfield, which was similarly to have her official 16th birthday photographs taken, weeks ahead of the event in the Nevilles' drawing room. That was the year when Anne rode with the Battle Riding Club in a pageant commemorative of 1066, and Guy Neville, then at Kent University, was in the audience with his sister Angela. A few days later, Guy took part in a fierce Norman jousting play, this time with Anne among the spectators. Lord Abergavenny's place, Airdrie Park, was also within Saturday's radius for visits to Anne's special friend of her own age, Guy's cousin, Lady Rose Neville, and the band of young people who would gather around the swimming pool in the June sun. Out of the term time, Anne watched the Airdrie horse trials 2 years running, and at a party afterwards there occurred the first casual, scarcely remembered meeting with a young Sandhurst cadet named Mark Phillips. With Prince Charles aboard Britannia during the summer holidays, Anne also took part in the 2-day visit to the home fleet in Clyde. When the Queen inspected the lines of fighting ships and little ships, and her daughter thoroughly enjoyed the fun of visiting frigates and destroyers, exploring below decks, clambering up and down the companionways. It was good training in more ways than one, as Charles said, with a glance at sisterly puppy Fat. There was a surprising array of attractive engagements that could indeed be fitted into holiday schedules, and the princess remained unaware of how much adult planning had gone into the happy overlaps of pleasure and pomp. Brother and sister were invited to Athens for the wedding of King Constantine of the Hellenists and Princess Anne Marie of Denmark, for whom Princess Anne was to be a bridesmaid, while Prince Charles and Prince Michael of Kent were crown bearers. They were crown bearers to the groom. But first, Prince Philip flew Charles and Anne from Balmoral to southern Germany for a festive series of family meetings with their aunts and cousins of Hesse and Hanover. In Greece, the wedding preliminaries were bright with balls and beach parties, feastings and fishing trips. The wedding service, a ceremony of great splendor in the Cathedral of Athens. It took place on Friday, 18 September, and on the following Monday, Anne was back at Benendon, back in the crowd for the first day of term. Princess Beatrice of Netherlands had similarly wished to invite Princess Anne to be a bridesmaid, but unwarily she fixed her wedding for 10 March, wanting Not even the nuptials of a crown princess could interrupt her school routine. The 10th was in fact a Thursday, the riding day at Benendon, and while the wedding cake was cut and the champagne glasses clinked in Amsterdam, Anne and her friends feasted at the most attractive of establishments, the mobile fish and chip shop in the village. Variety, Prince Philip once observed, in the spice of everything, a precept certainly followed whenever he had a say in devising his daughter's holiday fun. Flying her to Liechtenstein for her first winter sports holiday, Prince Philip piloted the Andover aircraft from London, pretending to be heading for Zurich, for instance, but then surprising her by switching to Paris, with time for a sightseeing swirl around the city and dinner at a bistro on the left bank before they caught the late-night Arlberg Express. The skiing itself was marred by the attention of massive contingents of the European press. "They didn't tell me about this," Anne remarked ruefully, "at my ski school in London." The following year, she quietly joined a group of Benetton girls for a package winter sports holiday at Davos, and she reveled in their complete anonymity. Her mother and father, similarly, not have made a more imaginative or alluring decision than to include her in Prince Philip's trip to Jamaica to open the Commonwealth Games. The program included an extramural incognito stopover in New York and a reunion in Kingston with Prince Charles, who flew in after his 2 terms in Australia at Timbertop. And at all the social events centered in the games, Princess Anne found herself pleasantly holding her own in the jamboree of some of the most toughly disciplined yet sturdily individualistic young men and women in the world. For side attractions, there was also Jamaica to explore, shooting the rapids of the Rio Grande on a raft and swimming amid the smooth long breakers of the Caribbean. The princess found, I think, that she could seldom enlarge on such pleasures. The carefree side of royal duty among her schoolfellows she could get by only by narrating the comic side, only then with her most trusted Benedon friends. Gone, now, were the unself-conscious days when she clicked ice cream with a Benedon cluster outside the village store or suggested that a takeoff of Trooping of the Color would be marvelous for a gymkhana. The real event was a giggle backstage. She said Papa had to give Mummy's horse a jab in the rump with his sword when it wasn't doing what it was told. But in her last year at school, one of her mistresses particularly noticed the public person taking over from the schoolgirl, conscious of the fact that she was Princess Anne. In 1968, she was also now endowed with the authority as captain of house, as well as an elected member of the upper sixth. Suddenly that summer, the GCE examinations were hanging over her. Like other lordly sixth formers, she left school still not knowing whether she had gained her A levels. She in fact passed in history and geography. She had a special merit in an optional extra geography paper. Just before the irrevocable end of term, the Queen, with the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales, visited Benendon on Hobbies Day. They watched the Hobbies entertainment, which ranged from piano solos indoors to Princess Anne in the quadrilles outdoors, to take sherry with the staff and to dine with the upper sixth, the council, and the founders. Presenting the prizes, the queen could not fail to notice that none had been won by her daughter, but Princess Anne, that last year, had conscientiously attended lectures on the care of the old and the care of the environment, on occupation therapy and teaching and aspects of social work, on industrial management and local government finance. She had learned something of the practical careers that others would follow, from the jobs of the War Office to town planning and nursing. She had been trained in committee work. She had taken part in mock elections and had become versed in the activities of a social services group in London to which many Benendon seniors are dedicated. There never has been better training for a princess, a future Princess Royale. And that is the end of that. That is quite a training ground for a Princess Royale. So I'm very impressed. But I will end it here because this was a long chapter.